the dark and bizarre world of ancient Egypt. Sacred crocodiles, beauty rituals, and terrifying ceremonies, Pharaoh Code, fellow time travelers, and historical hunters. Welcome back to the Pharaoh Code, where we unlock the most mind-bending mysteries of lost civilizations. I'm your archaeological guide, and today we're embarking on one of the most extraordinary journeys through ancient Egypt you've ever witnessed. What you're about to discover will challenge everything you thought you knew about the ancient world. Before we dive into these absolutely incredible revelations, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell. Trust me, you won't want to miss what we're about to uncover in the shadows of the pyramids. The mystery unfolds, setting the scene. Picture this dramatic scene. Thick incense smoke swirls through a dimly lit chamber. Priests chant in ancient tongues that haven't been spoken for millennia. And in the center lies a mummy or statue about to undergo one of the most sacred rituals ever conceived by human imagination. This was the opening of the mouth ceremony, a ritual so powerful the Egyptians believed it could literally resurrect the senses of the dead. Part 1. The opening of the mouth, awakening the eternal. Now, fellow explorers, let me take you deeper into this incredible ceremony. Recent archaeological excavations at Saqqara have uncovered new evidence about this ritual that's absolutely revolutionary. The opening of the mouth wasn't just performed once, it was repeated 75 times during the burial process. Each repetition involved different tools, each with specific magical properties. The ceremony began at dawn, when the boundary between worlds was believed to be thinnest. Priests wearing leopard skins. And here's something fascinating. These weren't just any leopard skins. New DNA analysis from preserved priestly garments shows these leopards were specifically imported from Nubia, considered sacred animals of the goddess Mafdet, protector against venomous creatures. The tools used included the pesishkef, a forked flint knife that archaeologists now believe was originally used to cut umbilical cords, symbolically birthing the deceased into the afterlife. The nectary blades, made from meteoric iron, literally metal from the heavens, were worth more than gold. Recent X-ray fluorescence analysis of these tools from Tutankhamun's tomb revealed that they contained nickel and cobalt concentrations, only found in meteorites. But here's what will blow your mind. The ritual wasn't just spiritual theater. The ancient Egyptians understood something profound about consciousness and identity. The Ka, the life force, needed sensory connection to exist. Without taste, touch, sight, hearing, and smell, the soul would be trapped in eternal sensory deprivation. The priests were essentially performing supernatural surgery, reconnecting the consciousness to its eternal body. And it wasn't just for mummies. Statues underwent this ceremony daily in temples across Egypt. Every morning, priests would wake up the statue of the god, feed it breakfast, dress it in fresh linens, and apply makeup. Archaeological evidence from the Temple of Karnak shows where patterns on statue mouths from thousands of years of daily touching with ritual implements. Part 2. Sobek, the crocodile god's terrifying truth. Now, imagine walking along the Nile 4,000 years ago and stumbling upon a massive crocodile wearing golden jewelry and being hand-fed by priests. This wasn't fantasy. This was the reality of Sobek worship, and recent discoveries have revealed just how extreme this practice really was. At the temple complex of Kam archaeologists have uncovered evidence of an entire crocodile breeding program. These weren't wild crocodiles, they were specifically bred for divinity. DNA analysis of mummy crocodiles shows selective breeding for size and temperament over hundreds of generations. Some of these sacred crocodiles grew to over 20 feet long. But here's the shocking part. These crocodiles were given names and titles. Hieroglyphic inscriptions reveal names like Beloved of Sobek and Living Image of the Lord of Waters. They had their own priests, called Servants of the Sacred Pool, whose sole job was caring for these reptilian deities. Recent papyrus translations showed detailed feeding schedules. These crocodiles dined on choice cuts of beef, specially prepared fish, and during festivals, they were given honey cakes and wine. When a sacred crocodile died, the mourning rituals were extraordinary. The entire city would go into a 7-day period of lamentation. The crocodile would be mummified using the same expensive techniques reserved for royalty, including removal of internal organs, natron drying for 70 days, and wrapping in the finest linen. Some crocodile mummies have been found with gold leaf on their teeth and precious stones for eyes. Archaeological surveys using ground-penetrating radar have revealed massive crocodile cemeteries at Tebtunis alone, Over 10,000 crocodile mummies have been discovered, ranging from tiny hatchlings to massive adults. Each was buried with offerings, fish, meat, and even miniature crocodile statues to serve them in the afterlife. But why this obsession with crocodiles? New research suggests it wasn't just about fear and respect. The Egyptians had observed that crocodiles could predict the Nile's flooding. They would move to higher ground days before the flood arrived. By watching the sacred crocodile's behavior, priests could warn farmers about incoming floods, literally saving thousands of lives. Sobek wasn't just a god of destruction, he was an early warning system that protected Egyptian civilization. Part 3. The Curse of Red Hair, Ancient Prejudice Revealed. Imagine having red hair in ancient Egypt. You'd either be worshipped as divine or feared as cursed. Recent genetic studies of mummies have revealed something absolutely fascinating. Red hair was far more common in ancient Egypt than previously thought, appearing in about 6% of the population, compared to less than 2% today. The connection to Set, god of chaos, made redheads walking supernatural magnets. But here's where it gets really interesting. New hieroglyphic translations from the Temple of Edfu describe specific rituals for purifying red-haired individuals. They would undergo monthly ceremonies where their hair was washed in sacred Nile water mixed with natron and specific herbs to neutralize Set's influence. Ramesses II, one of Egypt's greatest pharaohs, indeed had red hair. But recent microscopic analysis reveals something incredible. His hair was regularly treated with henna mixed with lead-based compounds to enhance and maintain its red color even in death. This wasn't natural red hair aging, it was deliberate preservation of what was considered a divine attribute. His red hair connected him to Set's power over foreign lands, legitimizing his military conquests. Archaeological evidence from Deir el-Medina, the village of royal tomb builders, shows fascinating social dynamics around red hair. Payroll records indicate red-haired workers receive 20% higher wages, not from favoritism, but as spiritual hazard pay, for their supposed supernatural volatility. There are even instances of red-haired individuals being excused from certain religious ceremonies, because their presence might disturb the cosmic balance. The sacrifice of red-haired animals was more complex than simple appeasement. These sacrifices occurred during specific astronomical alignments, when Set's influence was believed strongest. The animals weren't killed violently, they were ritually strangled with red silk cords. Their bodies then burned completely to ash, which was scattered in the Nile to dissolve chaos into order. Recent chemical analysis of ash deposits at sacred sites confirms massive burning ceremonies involving hundreds of red-furred animals during certain periods. Part 4. Extreme Beauty Rituals. The Price of Perfection. The ancient Egyptians took beauty routines to absolutely extreme levels that would make modern spa treatments look tame. Let's start with their makeup, which recent chemical analysis reveals was essentially controlled poisoning for the sake of beauty. The famous Kohl eye makeup contained up to 30% lead sulfide, along with antimony and copper compounds. While these metals did have antibacterial properties that helped prevent eye infections, long-term use caused lead poisoning symptoms, including tremors, memory loss, and infertility. Examinations of mummies show bone lead levels 40 times higher than modern safe limits. But here's the fascinating part. They knew it was dangerous. Medical papyri describe symptoms we now recognize as lead poisoning, yet they continued using it. Why? Because they believed the spiritual protection outweighed physical harm. The Eye of Horus symbol painted around eyes wasn't just decorative, it was a magical barrier against evil. Recent tomb paintings discovered in 2023 show priests performing Kohl consecration ceremonies, blessing makeup batches with spells to minimize their harmful effects while maximizing spiritual protection. The complete body hair removal wasn't just about hygiene, it was a religious imperative. Priests had to be completely hairless to enter sacred spaces. They achieved this using a combination of methods that would make anyone wince. Bronze razors honed to surgical sharpness, tweezers for precision work, and a sugaring paste made from honey and plant resins that ripped hair out by the roots. Some priests underwent this complete body hair removal every 3 days. Archaeological evidence from elite bathhouses shows even more extreme treatments. Wealthy Egyptians had their servants apply depilatory creams made from quicklime and arsenic compounds, essentially chemical burns that dissolved hair. but also damaged skin. Mummies of nobility often show scarring patterns, consistent with repeated chemical hair removal. One particularly well-preserved mummy of a priestess from the Temple of Hathor shows complete alopecia, likely from a lifetime of aggressive hair removal treatments. Dental hygiene presents another shocking picture. While Egyptians invented toothpaste, a mixture of rock salt, mint, iris flowers, and pepper, they also practiced dental modifications that seem torturous today. Elite Egyptians had their teeth filed into points or specific patterns as status symbols. Some even had precious stones drilled and inserted into their front teeth. CT scans of mummies reveal extensive dental abscesses and infections from these procedures, suggesting many endured constant pain for the sake of beauty. Part 5. The macabre world of death makeup. The application of cosmetics to mummies reveals an obsession with eternal beauty that goes beyond anything we might imagine. Recent discoveries using multispectral imaging have shown that mummy makeup was far more elaborate than previously thought. The process began immediately after the 70-day mummification period. Specialist priests, called beautifiers of the god, would spend up to a week applying cosmetics to the deceased. They used brushes made from palm fibers and applicators carved from ivory, the same tools used by the living. The makeup wasn't just slapped on, it was applied in intricate patterns following religious texts that specified exact colors and designs for different social classes and professions. Here's something incredible. Analysis of makeup residues on mummies reveals they used different formulations than the living. Death makeup contained higher concentrations of antibacterial compounds, including honey, myrrh, and frankincense oils. These weren't just for preservation. Egyptians believed bacteria and decay demons were the same thing. The makeup literally protected the dead from supernatural corruption. Royal mummies received the ultimate treatment. Tutankhamun's mummy shows traces of gold leaf applied to his eyelids, crushed lapis lazuli on his cheeks, and his lips were painted with a mixture of red ochre and tree resin that's still visible after 3,000 years. Recent chemical analysis reveals his face was also treated with a clear varnish made from pistachia tree resin, essentially an ancient form of setting spray to preserve the makeup for eternity. Female mummies often had their cheeks tinted with a mixture of red ochre and fat. Their lips painted bright red and elaborate eye makeup that extended to their temples. The mummy of Queen Nefertari shows she was buried wearing the ancient equivalent of a full glamour makeup look that would rival any modern red carpet appearance. Part 6. The Weighing of the Heart, Ultimate Judgment. The weighing of the heart ceremony was the ultimate final exam, and failing meant complete obliteration. But recent papyrus discoveries have revealed this judgment was far more complex than we ever imagined. The deceased had to pass through 42 different judges before even reaching the scales. Each judge represented a different sin, and the dead had to make negative confessions, denying they had committed specific crimes. These ranged from, "I have not killed," to incredibly specific ones, like, "I have not waded in water belonging to another," or "I have not eavesdropped." Archaeological evidence suggests wealthy Egyptians hired priests to memorize all 42 confessions on their behalf, essentially hiring supernatural lawyers. The heart itself underwent preparation before judgment. Priests would inscribe specific spells on heart scarabs, beetle-shaped amulets placed over the heart during mummification. These scarabs contained magical formulas commanding the heart not to testify against its owner. Over 3,000 heart scarabs have been discovered, each with personalized inscriptions. Some even contained threats against the heart. "Do not stand against me, or I will report you to the gods." But here's the most amazing discovery. Recent CT scans of mummies reveal that some Egyptians had their hearts removed and replaced with heart scarabs entirely. They literally tried to cheat death by swapping their potentially sin-heavy hearts for magically programmed artificial ones. This practice was so common among the wealthy that prices for heart scarabs in ancient Egypt exceeded the cost of an entire house. The monster Ammit, who devoured failed hearts, wasn't just a spiritual threat. Temple carvings show priests wearing Ammit masks during judgment rehearsals. Yes, the Egyptians practiced for their afterlife judgment. Wealthy families would hire priests to conduct mock trials, identifying potential spiritual weaknesses and prescribing prayers, offerings, or good deeds to offset them before death. Part 7. Dream incubation. Sleeping with the gods. Dream incubation in Egyptian temples was essentially supernatural healthcare. And new archaeological evidence shows these practices were far more sophisticated than anyone imagined. The process began days before entering the temple. Seekers underwent purification rituals including fasting, sexual abstinence, and bathing in sacred pools infused with natron and holy oils. They consumed special dream-inducing potions that chemical analysis reveals contained blue lotus extract, mandrake root, and trace amounts of opium. Essentially ancient psychedelics designed to promote vivid dreaming. Temple sleeping chambers weren't random spaces. They were architecturally designed for optimal dream reception. Recent acoustic studies of the Temple of Dendera show sleeping chambers were built with specific resonances that created subsonic frequencies when wind passed through hidden channels. These frequencies below human hearing have been shown to induce altered states of consciousness and increase dream vividness. The positions of sleepers were precisely arranged according to astronomical alignments. Papyrus documents from the House of Life at Abydos show detailed diagrams of sleeping positions for different ailments. Head pointing north for mental illness, east for fertility issues, west for communication with the deceased. Seekers would sleep on special dream beds made from sycamore wood, considered a tree that bridged the mortal and divine worlds. But here's the most fascinating part. Priests kept detailed dream archives. Thousands of dream records have been discovered, creating ancient databases of symbolism and interpretation. If someone dreamed of a crocodile eating bread, priests could reference centuries of similar dreams to determine it meant upcoming financial prosperity. These dream libraries were so extensive that priests specialized in specific types of dreams. Some interpreted only agricultural dreams, others specialized in dreams of the dead. Success rates were tracked to temple records. From Memphis showed that 60% of dream seekers reported receiving useful divine guidance, with healing dreams being the most commonly reported successful outcome. Grateful patients left votive offerings, miniature beds, eye symbols, and carved representations of their healed body parts. One temple cache contained over 3,000 miniature bronze ears left by people whose hearing was supposedly restored through dream healing. Part 8. The Cannibal Hymns Devouring Divine Power. The cannibal hymns from the pyramid texts aren't just metaphorical power fantasies. They describe an entire cosmic system of supernatural consumption that's absolutely mind-blowing in its complexity. These texts, found in pyramids dating from 2400 BCE, describe the dead pharaoh hunting and consuming gods themselves. But recent translations reveal this wasn't random divine carnage. It followed specific rules. The pharaoh could only consume gods who had been judged unworthy by a cosmic tribunal. He became a supernatural apex predator, maintaining divine order by eliminating corrupt deities. The consumption process is described in graphic detail. The pharaoh's helpers, identified as supernatural butchers, lasso gods with magical ropes, slaughter them at dawn, and cook them in cosmic cauldrons. Different gods are prepared differently. Sky gods are roasted, earth gods are boiled, and water gods are consumed raw. Each cooking method corresponds to absorbing different types of power. Here's something incredible. The texts specify which parts of gods grant which abilities. Eating a god's heart grants their courage, their brain provides wisdom, their arms give strength, and consuming their shadow allows the pharaoh to travel between dimensions. It's essentially a supernatural, anatomical guide to divine consumption. Archaeological evidence suggests these hymns weren't just recited, they were performed. Tomb paintings show priests wearing masks of different gods, while others, dressed as the pharaoh, symbolically consumed them during coronation ceremonies. These ritual cannibalism plays reinforced the pharaoh's supreme power over even the gods themselves. But the most shocking discovery came from chemical analysis of ritual vessels from royal tombs. Residues show they contained a mixture of beef, blood, wine, and rare herbs that priests claimed allowed the pharaoh to taste divine essence. Some vessels also contained traces of psychoactive substances, suggesting these ceremonies involved altered states where pharaohs believed they were literally consuming divine power. Part 9. Ancient Egyptian Diet, Bizarre Delicacies, and Sacred Foods. The ancient Egyptian diet was far more exotic, and sometimes revolting, than history books tell us. Recent analysis of preserved stomach contents and coprolites, that's fossilized feces, from various tombs has revealed dietary habits that range from ingenious to... Let's start with their bread, the foundation of every meal. But here's the shocking truth. Egyptian bread was destroying their teeth. Sand from grinding stones mixed into flour created bread that was essentially edible sandpaper. Dental analysis of mummies shows worn teeth ground down to the nerves by age 30. The pain must have been excruciating. Wealthy Egyptians tried to counter this by having servants sift flour through progressively finer linens, but even royal bread contained enough grit to cause dental damage. Now for the truly bizarre. Dried mouse was considered a medical delicacy. Whole mice were dried in the sun, ground into powder, and mixed with milk as a cure for everything from coughs to bladder stones. Archaeological evidence from medical papyri shows detailed recipes. Take one mouse, dried for 3 days under the full moon. Grind with honey and swan fat, administer at sunset. Jars labeled mouse medicine have been found in numerous tombs, suggesting people wanted their medicinal mice in the afterlife too. Locusts weren't just eaten during famines, they were a prized protein source. Egyptians developed sophisticated locust catching techniques using nets and smoke. They'd roast them over fires, grind them into protein-rich flour, or preserve them in salt. One papyrus describes a royal feast where locusts were served glazed with honey and imported spices, essentially ancient Egyptian popcorn chicken. But here's something that'll really shock you. They ate hippo. Despite being sacred to Tauret, goddess of childbirth, hippopotamus was reserved for special occasions. The fat was especially prized, used in cooking, medicine, and even as a hair pomade. Hunting hippos was so dangerous that successful hunters became celebrities. Tomb paintings show elaborate hippo hunts with dozens of boats and spearmen, making it the ancient equivalent of extreme sports. Fish was complicated. Some species were sacred, others were taboo, and it changed by region and time period. In some areas, eating catfish meant death because they were sacred to the god Adam. In others, catfish was daily food. Priests kept detailed lists of which fish could be eaten on which days according to religious calendars. Imagine checking a spiritual spreadsheet before deciding what to have for dinner. The wealthy enjoyed exotic imports that seem bizarre even today. Flamingo tongues were considered the ultimate delicacy. Giraffe marrow was believed to increase height in children, and elephant heart was supposedly consumed by pharaohs before battle to gain courage. These weren't common foods, but their mention in tomb offerings shows the extreme lengths Egyptians went to for culinary status symbols. Part 10. Beer, the liquid foundation of civilization. Egyptian beer wasn't just a drink. It was liquid bread, salary, medicine, and religious offering all rolled into one. New archaeological findings have completely revolutionized our understanding of ancient brewing, revealing an industry so sophisticated it would impress modern craft brewers. First, let's talk scale. The pyramid builders of Giza received a daily ration of 10 standard jars of beer. That's about 4 to 5 liters per person. Recent excavations of workers' villages show industrial-scale breweries capable of producing thousands of liters daily. Vat remains show standardized sizes, suggesting quality control measures that wouldn't be out of place in modern factories. But Egyptian beer was nothing like modern beer. Chemical analysis of residues from beer jars reveals alcohol content between 2 and 6%. Weak by today's standards, but perfect for all-day consumption in desert heat. The consistency was porridge-like, so thick it was drunk through special filtered straws made from gold, silver, or reeds, depending on social status. These straws had filters at the bottom to screen out grain chunks. Here's something amazing. Egyptians had specialty beers for different purposes. Medical papyri describe prescription beers containing specific herbs, mandrake beer for surgery, willow bark beer for pain relief, and juniper beer for kidney problems. Pregnant women drank special iron-rich beers made with dates and figs. There was even an antibiotic beer containing tetracycline-producing bacteria from grain storage. Ancient Egyptians were accidentally brewing medicinal beer thousands of years before we understood antibiotics. Religious beers were a whole different category. The beer of truth was consumed by judges before trials, supposedly helping them see through lies. Hathor's Joy was a special brew for religious festivals containing blue lotus and other mild psychoactives. Temple records show recipes for 17 different types of sacred beer, each for specific rituals. The business side is equally fascinating. Beer was so integral to the economy that we have employment contracts specifying exact beer payments, quality standards, and even beer insurance. One papyrus records a lawsuit where workers successfully sued for receiving inferior beer unfit for a free Egyptian. There were beer inspectors who tested quality, beer tax collectors, and even beer counterfeiters who watered down brews. Some things never change. Recent DNA analysis of yeast residues has allowed scientists to recreate ancient Egyptian beer. The taste, described as sweet, fruity, and slightly sour, more like a thick alcoholic smoothie than modern beer. But here's the kicker. Nutritional analysis shows ancient Egyptian beer contained high levels of B vitamins, proteins, and antibiotics from fermentation. It literally was liquid bread that prevented malnutrition and disease. Part 11. The Festival of Drunkenness. Sacred Intoxication. The Festival of Drunkenness wasn't just ancient Egypt's biggest party. It was a religious obligation that involved the entire population getting cosmically wasted to save the world. Recent archaeological discoveries have revealed just how organized and extreme this sacred binge drinking really was. The festival commemorated the myth of Sekhmet, the lion goddess who nearly destroyed humanity in a drunken rage. Ra, the sun god, tricked her by flooding the land with beer dyed red to look like blood. She drank herself unconscious, waking as the gentle goddess Hathor. To prevent her from returning to her destructive form, Egyptians recreated this divine drinking session annually. Temple records from Bubastis show mind-boggling logistics. For a city of 30,000, priests prepared over 100,000 liters of special festival beer. This wasn't regular beer. It contained additives like pomegranate juice for color, honey for sweetness, and most importantly, blue lotus and mandrake for psychoactive effects. Participants weren't just getting drunk, they were entering altered states of consciousness. The festival followed specific stages documented in temple reliefs. First came the Procession of Abundance, where participants drank while walking to temples. Then the Great Drunkenness, where everyone drank until passing out in temple courtyards. Priests would walk among the unconscious, burning incense and chanting protective spells. The final stage, the Waking to Joy, involved musicians playing drums and sistrums to wake everyone at dawn, symbolizing humanity's salvation. But here's the shocking part. This wasn't optional. Tax records show citizens who didn't participate faced fines. Wealthy Egyptians who couldn't handle heavy drinking hired substitute drinkers. Poor citizens who would get drunk on their behalf, temple accounts record payments for professional drinkers. While maintaining enough consciousness to perform required prayers, medical papyri from the period describe special hangover cures distributed by temples. The morning after, a mixture of cabbage, mint, and juniper berries in vinegar, surprisingly, similar to modern hangover remedies. Temples also provided recovery rooms with beds and attendants for those too intoxicated to make it home. The festival had strict rules. Despite the chaos, violence was punishable by death, as violence during sacred drunkenness could wake Sekhmet's rage. Sexual activity was encouraged as it honored Hathor's fertility aspect, leading to a baby boom 9 months after each festival. Archaeological evidence shows birth records spiking predictably after the Festival of Drunkenness. Foreign visitors were amazed and often scandalized. One Greek writer described seeing judges and priests, normally pillars of dignity, rolling in the streets, singing hymns to Hathor while covered in their own vomit, yet treating it as the highest form of worship. The Romans later tried to ban the festival, considering it barbaric, but it continued in secret for centuries. Part 12. Animal Mummies, the Industry of Eternal Pets. The ancient Egyptian animal mummy industry was a massive economic enterprise that would make modern pet cemeteries look like amateur operations. Recent CT scanning and DNA analysis of thousands of animal mummies has revealed shocking truths about this bizarre practice. Let's start with the numbers. Archaeologists estimate over 70 million animal mummies were produced in ancient Egypt. That's more mummies than the human population of Egypt during its entire ancient period. The sacred animal necropolis at Saqqara alone contains over 8 million mummified ibises, 4 million hawks, and countless cats, dogs, crocodiles, and even scarab beetles. But here's the scandalous part. Recent CT scans reveal that up to 70% of animal mummies are fakes. They're elaborately wrapped bundles containing partial animals, random bones, or sometimes just mud and sticks. This wasn't accident, it was organized fraud on an industrial scale. Temple priests were running what amounts to ancient Egypt's biggest scam, selling fake mummies to desperate pilgrims seeking divine favor. The real mummies revealed disturbing practices. Many young animals show evidence of deliberate killing, broken necks, strangulation marks, or poisoning. Cats were bred in industrial catteries specifically to be killed and mummified at a few months old. One cattery site revealed evidence of thousands of kittens killed on the same day, likely for a major religious festival where demand for cat mummies peaked. Some animal mummies received treatment that exceeded human mummies. A sacred bull mummy from Memphis was found with gold leaf on its horns, lapis lazuli eyes, and internal organs preserved in individual canopic jars worth more than most houses. The bull had been fed exclusively on milk and honey for its entire life, evidenced by isotope analysis of its bones. When it died naturally at age 25, the entire city went into mourning for 70 days. But the most bizarre were the composite mummies, different animals combined to create mythical creatures. Archaeologists have found mummies combining bird heads with snake bodies, crocodile heads on dog bodies, and even multi-headed creatures made from several animals. These weren't mistakes, but deliberate creations representing supernatural beings that existed between the mortal and divine worlds. The economic impact was staggering. Temple records show the animal mummy industry employed thousands: breeders, killers, embalmers, wrapper, sellers, and even mummy inspectors who certified authenticity. Though clearly many were taking bribes, one papyrus records a priest's confession. "I have sold 10,000 false ibises to pilgrims. May Thoth forgive my deception for profit." Recent genetic analysis has revealed another shocking truth. Some animal mummies contain extinct species. We've found mummies of animals that disappeared from Egypt thousands of years ago, suggesting Egyptians were either importing exotic animals from incredible distances or that some species survived longer than previously thought. One crocodile mummy contained DNA from a species thought extinct for 5,000 years, rewriting our understanding of Egyptian fauna. Part 13. Royal Incest. Keeping divinity in the family. The practice of royal incest in ancient Egypt wasn't just accepted, it was considered the highest form of sacred marriage. But new genetic analysis of royal mummies has revealed the devastating biological price of keeping divine blood pure. DNA testing of 18 royal mummies from the New Kingdom shows that the practice was even more extensive than historical records suggest. Tutankhamun's family tree is more like a family web. His parents were brother and sister, his grandparents were cousins, and he himself married his half-sister. Genetic markers show at least 5 generations of continuous sibling marriages in his lineage. The physical consequences were horrific. Tutankhamun suffered from a cleft palate, clubfoot, severe scoliosis, and a degenerative bone disease, all linked to inbreeding. CT scans reveal he couldn't walk without canes, explaining the 130 walking sticks found in his tomb. His 2 stillborn daughters, found mummified in his tomb, show even more severe deformities incompatible with life. But here's what's really fascinating. The Egyptians knew about these problems. Medical papyri describe royal diseases that sound exactly like genetic disorders from inbreeding. They had specific terms for conditions we now recognize as Habsburg jaw, hemophilia, and various skeletal deformities. Yet they continued the practice, viewing physical deformities as marks of divine otherness rather than defects. The political motivations were complex. Sisters who married their pharaoh brothers weren't just queens. They became God's wife, a position that carried enormous power. They controlled vast temple estates, had their own military forces, and could make political decisions independently. For royal women, marrying their brothers was often the only way to maintain power. Hatshepsut likely married her half-brother, Thutmose II, to secure her position before eventually ruling as pharaoh herself. Recent discoveries show the practice extended beyond siblings. The Abydos king list hints at father-daughter marriages, though these were apparently rare enough to cause scandal even by Egyptian standards. One papyrus describes a trial where a pharaoh was accused of exceeding divine boundaries by attempting to marry his mother, suggesting even royal incest had limits. The religious justification was elaborate. Egyptians believed pharaohs were living gods, descendants of Isis and Osiris, who were themselves siblings and spouses. Royal incest recreated this divine marriage, maintaining the sacred bloodline that connected Egypt to the gods. Temple reliefs show these marriages blessed by gods, with Isis and Osiris literally standing behind the incestuous couple in approval. Foreign rulers found this practice both fascinating and repulsive. Diplomatic letters from Babylonian and Hittite kings express shock at Egyptian marriage customs. One Babylonian king wrote, "Why does your majesty marry your sister when the whole world offers you princesses?" The Egyptian response was simple. Since time immemorial, no daughter of Egypt has been given to anyone. They saw their bloodline as too divine to dilute with foreign marriage. Part 14. False beards. The power of artificial facial hair. The false beard wasn't just a fashion statement. It was a supernatural power amplifier that connected pharaohs directly to the gods. New archaeological evidence reveals these artificial beards were far more complex and meaningful than anyone imagined. First, let's talk construction. These weren't cheap costume pieces, but elaborate works of art. Royal false beards were made from precious materials including gold, silver, lapis lazuli, and even human hair from conquered enemies. Wearing your defeated foe's hair on your face was the ultimate power move. The most elaborate beard discovered, from an unknown pharaoh's tomb, contained over 3,000 individually attached gold threads that would have shimmered with every movement. The attachment method was sophisticated, not just tied on with string, but secured using a complex system of gold clips that attached to a ceremonial headdress. This distributed weight evenly and allowed the beard to stay in place during long ceremonies. Some pharaohs had special beard bearers whose job was to adjust and maintain the false beard during public appearances. Female pharaohs wearing beards wasn't about gender confusion, but power assertion. Hatshepsut's false beard evolved during her reign, starting short and straight when she was regent, growing longer and more curved as she assumed full pharaonic power. Statues show her beard eventually matched those of male pharaohs exactly, complete with a divine curved tip that pointed toward the heavens. But here's the really weird part. False beards were believed to continue growing after death. Tomb paintings show deceased pharaohs with longer beards than they wore in life, and some mummies were buried with multiple replacement beards of increasing length. The belief was that as the pharaoh's divine power grew in the afterlife, so would their beard. Different occasions required different beards. War beards were straight and aggressive-looking, often painted with images of bound enemies. Religious beards were curved and decorated with sacred symbols. There were even special judgment beards worn during trials, supposedly helping pharaohs see truth from lies. One papyrus describes a pharaoh having 17 different ceremonial beards for different occasions. The beard's power wasn't just symbolic. Egyptians believed the false beard was a magical antenna connecting the pharaoh to divine wisdom. Priests performed daily beard awakening ceremonies, anointing false beards with sacred oils and reciting spells to activate their power. Some beards contained hidden compartments with magical amulets or written spells, essentially making them wearable magical devices. Losing or damaging a pharaoh's false beard was catastrophic. One papyrus records an incident where a priest accidentally knocked off a pharaoh's beard during a ceremony. The entire ritual had to stop. The temple was purified for 7 days, and the priest was exiled to Nubia. The damaged beard was buried with full funeral rites, as if it were a deceased royal family member. Part 15. Medical madness treatments that killed or cured. Egyptian medicine was simultaneously the most advanced and most insane in the ancient world. Recent analysis of medical papyri and mummified remains reveals treatments that range from surprisingly effective to horrifyingly deadly. Let's start with surgery. Egyptian surgeons were performing brain surgery 4,000 years ago. The Edwin Smith Papyrus describes 48 surgical cases, including detailed instructions for treating skull fractures by removing bone fragments from the brain. What's incredible is their understanding of antiseptics. They used honey and copper compounds that we now know have antimicrobial properties. Success rates? Based on healed skull fractures and mummies, about 40% of brain surgery patients survived. Remarkable considering they had no anesthesia beyond opium and alcohol. But then there's the insane stuff. Ground mummy powder was prescribed for everything. By the Middle Kingdom, older mummies were being ground up and sold as medicine. Mumia was believed to cure epilepsy, stomach problems, and even broken bones. The practice became so common that tomb robbing shifted from stealing treasures to stealing bodies for medical purposes. Chemical analysis of medicine jars shows that wealthy Egyptians were literally consuming their ancestors. The mouse treatment gets even weirder. Different colored mice treated different conditions. White mice for eye problems, black mice for hair loss, and spotted mice for skin conditions. But here's the truly disgusting part. They weren't always dried and ground. Fresh mouse blood was dropped directly into eyes for cataracts, and newborn mice were swallowed whole for throat problems. One medical papyrus recommends 3 blind baby mice, swallowed at dawn for persistent cough. Crocodile dung was the ancient Egyptian Viagra. Mixed with honey and inserted as a suppository, it was believed to cure impotence. But dung wasn't just from crocodiles. Different animals' feces treated different conditions. Fly droppings for baldness, pelican dung for gout, and hippopotamus dung as a contraceptive. The contraceptive actually might have worked, not through any medical property, but because the smell would have been an effective mood killer. Mental illness treatments were particularly bizarre. Depression was treated by sleeping in tombs to absorb death energy that would paradoxically reinvigorate life force. Schizophrenia was believed to be possession by multiple spirits, treated by drilling holes in the skull to let them escape. One papyrus describes treating anxiety by having the patient wear a necklace made from the bones of someone who died peacefully, supposedly transferring their calm to the wearer. But here's what's truly remarkable. When Egyptians got it right, they really got it right. They performed successful cataract surgery, set broken bones, with techniques still used today, and even did plastic surgery to repair facial injuries. They understood diabetes 1500 years before anyone else. Describing it as excessive urination with sweetness, they invented prosthetics, not just wooden toes, but articulated fingers, and even replacement eyes that moved with facial muscles. The pregnancy tests were weirdly accurate. Women urinated on wheat and barley seeds. If wheat grew, it was a boy. Barley meant a girl. No growth meant not pregnant. Modern testing shows this is 70% accurate. The elevated estrogen in pregnant women's urine actually does affect seed germination differently. Egyptian doctors even understood the placebo effect. Medical papyri include instructions for therapeutic deception, giving patients harmless treatments while telling them they're powerful medicines. One text advises, for the patient who believes he is dying, give him beer colored with red ochre and call it blood of Horus. His belief will heal him more than medicine. Part 16. Toilet troubles and bathroom behaviors. Ancient Egyptian bathroom habits reveal a society that was simultaneously obsessed with cleanliness and living in conditions we'd consider unsanitary. Recent archaeological excavations of ancient toilets and sewage systems have uncovered some truly shocking revelations. The elite had limestone toilet seats, essentially stone chairs with holes that were surprisingly ergonomic. But here's the luxury detail. They had servants whose job was to warm the seats before use. In winter, servants would sit on the toilet seats to warm them with body heat before their masters used them. Some royal toilets had built-in armrests and footrests, making them more like thrones than toilets. But the toilet paper situation was ... interesting. Wealthy Egyptians used pieces of limestone called astraca. Yes, they wiped with rocks. Smoother stones were more valuable, and some have been found with hieroglyphs suggesting they were passed down through families as heirlooms. The poor used broken pottery shards, which archaeologists call pessoi. Imagine the discomfort. Sand was also common, which might explain why hemorrhoid treatments feature so prominently in medical papyri. Public toilets were social centers. The largest discovered public toilet in Akhetaten had 12 seats in a row with no dividers. People would literally conduct business while doing their business. Graffiti on toilet walls includes political discussions, love poems, and even mathematical equations. One inscription reads, "While I empty my bowels, I contemplate the mysteries of the cosmos." Ancient philosophy on the toilet. The waste management system was remarkably organized. Professional night soil men collected waste from wealthy homes in ceramic jars, carrying them on donkeys to agricultural areas. This human fertilizer was so valuable, it was taxed. Records show disputes over fertilizer rights and even theft of particularly nutrient-rich waste from noble houses. One papyrus records a lawsuit where a farmer accused his neighbor of stealing his family's annual waste production. Parasites were a massive problem revealed through coprolite analysis. Nearly every Egyptian, from peasant to pharaoh, had intestinal worms. The irony: their bathroom habits spread these parasites. using human waste as fertilizer contaminated crops, which were then eaten, completing the cycle. Pharaoh Ramesses V's mummy shows he had 4 different types of intestinal parasites when he died. Here's something bizarre. Communal sponges on sticks were used in some public facilities, shared by everyone, and cleaned in jugs of vinegar water. The bacterial transmission must have been astronomical. Medical papyri describe numerous bathroom demons that caused disease, which were probably infections from poor hygiene. Priests performed daily toilet exorcisms in temples to banish these demons. Conclusion: the eternal mystery continues. Fellow time travelers, what we've uncovered today barely scratches the surface of ancient Egypt's bizarre and brilliant civilization. From sacred crocodiles wearing jewelry to pharaohs consuming the power of gods. From beauty treatments that slowly poisoned to toilets that were social centers. The ancient Egyptians lived in a world where the sacred and profane, the brilliant and bizarre, existed side by side. Every mummy tells a story. Every papyrus reveals new secrets, and every excavation rewrites history. These weren't just ancient people following strange customs. They were innovators, believers, and humans trying to understand their place in the cosmos through practices that seem alien to us, but made perfect sense in their world. What fascinates me most is how their obsessions mirror our own. The pursuit of beauty despite the cost, the fear of death and desperate desire for immortality, the need to connect with something greater than ourselves. They just expressed these universal human desires through crocodile gods, mouse medicine, and cosmic cannibalism. Remember, every bizarre practice we've discussed today was performed by people who built monuments that still stand, developed mathematics we still use, and created art that still takes our breath away. Their strange customs and our modern practices are separated only by time and perspective. Who knows? Maybe 3,000 years from now, future archaeologists will look at our customs with the same mixture of awe and horror. This is just the beginning of our journey through the mysteries of the ancient world. Next time on Pharaoh Code, we'll explore the secret chambers beneath the Sphinx, the hidden meaning of hieroglyphs that scholars don't want you to know, and evidence that ancient Egyptians might have possessed technologies we're only now rediscovering. Which of these ancient practices shocked you the most? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Did the Egyptians have it right about something we've forgotten? Share your theories. The best ones might feature in our next episode. If this journey through time amazed you, smash that like button and subscribe to Pharaoh Code for weekly adventures into history's greatest mysteries. Hit the notification bell so you never miss our excavations into the extraordinary past. Share this video with fellow history enthusiasts who need to know the bizarre truth about ancient Egypt. Until next time, keep questioning, keep exploring, and remember, the past is never as distant as it seems. This is Pharaoh Code, unlocking the mysteries of eternity, one discovery at a time.